Hey, Mike, looking good.
Thanks, Eric. How you doing?
Good, good. Thank you. Well, tell me, what was, I assume maybe you had some inkling or maybe more than an inkling, but whenever it is that you did know and Joe told you he was going to retire, what were your emotions?
Well, I knew a long time ago that this is something that he was considering and definitely leaning towards. It was probably a couple weeks after the Super Bowl that we probably didn't talk probably for a week or two because I had to go straight home to deal with some family stuff. And then while I was at home, he had called me and said, "This is what's going on, and here's what doctors are saying about what's going on with my body. Here's what I'm thinking about in terms of my family and what I can do with the girls moving forward." And so I knew quite a bit of time ago that this was probably what was going to happen. Obviously made official this past week, and a lot of emotions. You know, I didn't get hit with the emotions until it did become official, until I saw the outpouring of people that he truly touched, and the amount of fans and the amount of former players and the amount of coaches that he had come in contact with, and the touching, or the not the touching, but the imprint that he left on those people was just so powerful. And so it was a lot of emotions for me. Obviously, sadness because I'm losing my best friend and teammate, and but I'm very, very excited for him at the same time, man. He's earned the right to hang it up and earned the right to walk away with his head held high and with one organization. And it's something that's so impressive, and something that I'm definitely shooting for.
Mike, this is Chris Biederman. I know you've alluded to this before, that you started watching Joe Staley at a much younger age. Could you take us through that? When exactly Staley became somebody you started modeling your game after? And also, do you remember his block from the 2013 divisional round against the Saints, him getting out there and springing Alex Smith for that touchdown?
Yeah, so it was actually like right before that season had happened. I was either a junior or senior in high school, and I know it was a junior because I went to Notre Dame's junior day as a recruit. And when I was there, the strength coach at the time was a guy named Paul Longo, who wound up being my strength coach for 4 years at Notre Dame. He had worked with BK for forever, going all the way back to Central and before, and even Grand Valley State and those. So he had Joe for, I think, 3 years of his college. And when I came in as a recruit, I was, a tall guy, probably like 250 to 260 pounds, and as a junior in the middle of basketball season. And he said, "You remind me of this guy that I used to coach." And I was like, "Oh, well, who's that?" And he said, "Joe Staley." And I was like, "Okay." I had heard his name, obviously knew who he was, but never really dedicated myself to watching offensive line until that season, kind of, because when all the scholarship offers were coming in my junior year, they were all telling me I was going to play offensive line and not tight end. So I started kind of looking into O-line stuff that year. And after I went home, I told my high school equipment manager that I wanted to wear 74 after searching all these videos of them, and became an avid watcher of the Joe Show back then, and just tried to follow a path that he had set. And every interview, everything that I saw was that this guy Joe Staley was, he was the best in the world at what he did, but he was an even better teammate and leader on his team too. And that was always somebody that I wanted to model my game after, and now knowing him, certainly my life after. And then that block, obviously, I think that's one of the coolest plays I've ever seen, in such a crucial situation in that playoff game against a great Saints team. He pulls around faster than half of tight ends or fullbacks would to get up into that space, and lays out for his team, and still winds up being like the second or third guy to celebrate with Alex Smith in the end zone. I think it was at the Stick too. So I remember the crowd going wild after that for sure.
Hey, Mike, it's Nick. Thanks for doing this. First of all, just curious what you would like, or in your opinion, what you think Joe Staley's legacy would be in this game.
Well, I think he's a Hall of Famer, without a doubt. I think it's a a no-brainer. I think all accolades, 6 or 7 Bowls, All Pro, 2 Super Bowl appearances, all that kind of stuff, and all-decade team, all that kind of stuff. But something that's really not talked about with Joe is the transition that he made along with the game of football. I don't know if everybody can remember all the way back to 2007 and looking at what Joe was and what football was. Then it was a power game. It was offensive line big. They were strong. They weren't exactly looked at as the most athletic guys in the league. And then the way that offenses and defenses started to change and evolve, Joe had to do something with his game. So Joe has really played in 2 generations of football, and to make himself the best in the world at both stops is nothing short of impressive. And I think it's something. And I said this, I think, on a radio appearance a couple weeks ago, that to be somebody that has those accolades, has the obviously the prowess that he does, but to be the guy that generations of offensive linemen look to learn how to do things the right way on film, in real life, whatever, that's somebody to me that's a Hall of Famer. And he affected 15 years worth of offensive linemen of, all right, when you turn on how a left tackle is supposed to play football, both in a complete game. It's not just the fancy pass pro, the great athlete. Joe was the most complete offensive tackle of his generation, and that's something that I think should without a doubt be entrenched into the Hall of Fame.
Hey, Mike, it's Cam. Nicely said. We all know Joe is a personality and fun-loving guy as well, but give me an example, or the first time you saw the serious side of Joe Staley, and where he had to stand up and maybe take charge and say something to the team that kind of got them their heads on straight.
I don't even think it was with the team. It might have been with me. The first couple weeks you come in and you're a rookie and trying to pick up everything as fast as humanly possible and be into the, learn everything as fast as possible while OTAs are happening. And it's kind of a lightened, not necessarily a high pressure situation because you're going just against your own team and you're trying to get a feel for things. But I think it was that training camp or something that I think we were down in Houston, and it was the first time that I had gone up against, other competition in the NFL other than my own team, and stakes were higher. Everybody was watching. I was the first round pick, and JJ Watt was on the other side. And I remember getting flattened on the first drill that we did by JJ. And Joe comes over and he looks at me dead serious. He's like, can't get any worse than that. So you might as well just cut it loose and stop thinking about it the rest of the day. And that was kind of the first real serious in-game lesson that I had ever found from Joe, is like, yeah, these guys get paid too, man. Like, you're going to take your lumps. He told me the Strahan story about when he had his first start against Michael Strahan, and he connected with me in a way that, when it felt like all the world was coming down on my shoulders and how am I going to do this? How am I going to succeed here? He kind of put me at ease, and I was able to kind of keep growing step by step from there. And that was something along the multitude of lessons that he shared with me and the times that we've had together. That's probably the first time I remember getting talked to in a stern, this is what has to happen voice.
Mike, it's Matt Mayoko. You talked about when you knew Joe from afar, but what was it like for you to come in, the day after you get drafted, meet him for the first time, and then that connection that formed between you two? What was that whole experience like for you?
It was it was crazy for me because, like you said, he was somebody that I had looked up to and admired for a long time. And it wasn't just, it was like, this guy is the best. This is the guy that I want to become. And the first time I had ever had contact with him, I remember on draft night, he was one of the first texts that I got and responded to. And I had gotten a 408 number, which is, I guess, the Bay area code down here. And it was this paragraph, congratulations. Great job in your career thus far, but it's time to get to work. Welcome to the Niners. And at the end of it was Joe Staley. And I kind of had a little panic attack. I showed my brother, I showed my mom and dad. all that kind of stuff of how cool that moment was for me. And then the next day, you kind of felt his personality for the first time when I walked into the cafeteria and he made everybody stand up and give me a standing ovation to kind of mess with me. And, it was kind of smooth sailing ever since that.
Hey, Mike, it's Tracy Sandler. Other than what he does on the field, what are you going to miss most about Joe on game day?
On game day?
Yeah.
I think he's somebody, like I said earlier, I think he's somebody that keeps it light. He knows his teammates and where to push buttons and where not to push buttons. To the fire and the speeches that he gives everybody before everything comes up, and he's he's the guy that we'd bounce everything mid game off of each other. What are you seeing? How'd you do this? How's he playing it? How's this, that, and the other thing happening? And he was we were each other's sounding board for the last 2 years on game day, and we warm up together. We sit next to each other after we get dressed and all that kind of stuff, ready to go out. And so he's my partner. And other than my right guard, he's the guy that I communicate most with, or he was the guy that I communicated most with during game day. So it's something that I'm going to have to adjust with and get used to. But we got a pretty good guy coming in that I could probably do the same thing with.
Hey, Mike, it's Jennifer Lee Chan. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. What is something that really surprised you about Joe? I mean, a lot of things obviously are predictable, but what's something that surprised you and maybe would surprise us that you learned about him while you were with him?
I don't think anything really surprised me. I knew he was a jokester. I knew he was a great player. I knew all that stuff. But I guess what surprised me was the way that he, took in our relationship with each other. From the moment I got here, he's opened his arms up to be a friend and to be a mentor and all that kind of stuff. And I don't hear many stories across the NFL or anywhere where a 12-year veteran with a guy that, becomes best friends and takes under his wing a guy that could potentially be his replacement. Obviously, it's not working out. It didn't work out that way, but that's what the talk was at the time. And how selfless he was in that regard to, put everything aside, ego-wise. It doesn't matter what's going to happen in the future. This guy was drafted to help us win. It's in my best interest to help this guy get along for our football team, but also, just the way that he opened the doors up to his family, to himself, to our relationship that we had for the last 2.5, 3 years, is something that I'm going to cherish for the rest of my life. And that was the most surprising thing, was that I became best friends with this 35-year-old that, I wasn't expecting him to treat me that way. I was expecting to have to earn the respect and all that kind of stuff, which I did, but not as fast and not as openly as Joe had made, and how easy he made it for me.
Hey, Mike, it's Matt Barrows. Just wondering, what do you know about the incoming left tackle, Trent Williams? And do you still see left tackle being the position of your future, your long-term position?
I don't know the answer to that. That's up to Kyle and our offensive staff of whether or not they want me to move to left tackle. I'm very, very comfortable being a right tackle. I have no problems continuing my career if that's the way to play right tackle the entire time. It's something that I'm getting very good at. It's something that doesn't matter anymore. It's something that really I can't think of a reason why I would need to make the switch other than, outside world hype or on left tackles still a little bit more than right tackles, but the NFL doesn't view it that way. Obviously, with guys like Lane Johnson and Trent Brown and the contracts that they got, and then the left tackles that are coming in and out. So it's not a stigma to be a right tackle anymore. So I don't care either way. But I know a lot about Trent Williams, another guy that's been at the top of football in top of O-line play for the last decade. 7-time Pro Bowler, moves incredibly well, is so gifted as an athlete, and from everything you hear about him, is just as hard of a worker and plays as hard as anybody out there too, which is exciting. I've Trent and I texted back and forth a couple times when he and I when I first heard the news. Excited to have him in our room. Excited to be able to stuff from him. Hopefully he can pull a couple things from me and start a great run here this coming season.
Hey, Mike, Kate Rooney from Cron 4. Thanks for doing this. Just to kind of follow up on that question, from what you've seen from Trent, what do you think that he's going to, if anything, add to the team, and how will that look a little different than with Joe there?
Well, I don't know how different it's going to look because, you know, when you replace a Hall of Famer with another Hall of Famer, I think it's going to go. I think the best thing that Trent adds is that we're not going to lose the production of a Hall of Fame left tackle. I think that's the coolest thing about this whole situation, and what Joe even did to make sure that we were okay as the 49ers after he made his decision official. Like we don't have a drop off. We have, you know, we replaced one of the best tackles in the NFL with another one of the best tackles in the NFL, who both play the game very similarly, have nastiness in them, have off the charts athletic ability, and are incredible in pass protection. So in terms of what we're losing, we're losing our leader, we're losing our guy, we're losing the heart and soul of the 49ers, which is that stuff is going to be the tougher to replace than, you know, the production out of our left tackle, because Trent is so good.
Mike, you talked about, oh, this is Kiana, by the way. You talked about your strength coach back at Notre Dame, but we just talked to Brian Kelly earlier today, and he was saying from the first time he met you, he saw so many similarities in Joe Staley. Did you hear that a lot when you were at Notre Dame making those comparisons to him?
I don't think I needed to afterwards, because there was something that I strove for. I think I don't know if I was reminded a lot, but I was able to use what they said when I was in high school, because BK said the same thing to me when I was on that same day. It was just Paul that said it first. But that was really the only time that they really talked to me about being Joe Staley or like Joe Staley, until I, you know, would sit in after hours in our football facility and see all of the tape that was in our film database, and Joe Staley's year, like there was probably 3 or 4 years worth of San Francisco 49ers game film that BK would watch his former players play. And that was made available to me because I was asking for it, and it's something that I stumbled upon, like just searching through when I was, you know, watching film one day, and I went down a rabbit hole of just watching like all 3 seasons of Joe for a couple weeks straight, and obviously had conversations with people of how to do things, how did he do this, where did he start. So I've heard all the stories and stuff like that, but I don't think any coach in their right mind would put something on a freshman that says you need to be a Joe Staley, you know, because that's pretty hard to live up to.